an entitled mom shows up to my house demanding that I hand over my cat so that she can borrow him for her 6-year-old's birthday party. But despite the fact that I told her on Instagram that my cat isn't available for loan, she still decided to show up to my house, screaming that I was selfish for not handing over my cat. And I've honestly never dealt with anybody this insane in my life. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm an 18-year-old female, and I have a very fluffy and very adorable cat that I named Mochi. He's basically my little buddy, and he's got one of those Instagram accounts where I post funny antics, so a lot of people in my neighborhood know about him. And this includes one mom who is the entitled mom of this story, who has a 6-year-old daughter who's super into cats. Well, one day, this entitled mom messages me on Instagram, saying that her daughter is absolutely obsessed with Mochi, and asking if I could bring him to her daughter's birthday party the following weekend so that the kids could play with him. Well, I politely declined, explaining that Mochi doesn't do well in new environments and would likely hide or freak out around loud kids. Now, what was this entitled mom's response? She said to me, "Well, can you just loan him to us for the day?" And yes, you heard that right. She literally wanted me to just hand over my cat as if he were a library book or something like that. She promised that they would take good care of him and even offered to pay me $20 for the inconvenience. But I politely refused again, saying that Mochi isn't up for loan, and I don't think it would be safe or comfortable for him. This entitled mom immediately switched tactics. She then started calling me selfish and was accusing me of gatekeeping joy from her daughter. She rants about how it's just one day and that I owe it to the community because I flaunt Mochi's pictures online all the time. Well, at this point, I'm now getting irritated. I tell her that my cat isn't an accessory, and he is definitely not something that I owe to the neighborhood. Now, I assume that's the end of it, but unfortunately, things pop off the day of the party. I'm just sitting in my apartment when I hear a loud knock at my door. Standing right in front of me is the entitled mom and her daughter, with the girl holding up a sparkling cat carrier. The entitled mom smiles at me and says, "Oh, we came to pick up Mochi." And she's standing there acting as if we had agreed on this in some kind of way and just expected me to hand him over on demand. Well, I was completely stunned. I then said to her, "Look, I never agreed to this, and I'm definitely not giving up my cat." The entitled mom's smile drops instantly, and she launches into this loud, dramatic rant about how I'm ruining her daughter's special day and that I should not have shown off my cat if I didn't want to share. Her daughter then starts tearing up, and the entitled mom gives me this accusing look, as if I've broken her kid's heart on purpose. My neighbor down the hall actually poked her head out to see what was going on, which was more than enough for this entitled mom to grab her daughter and storm off. As she was leaving, she yelled at me and said, "I'll make sure that everybody knows how selfish you are." I later found out from mutual friends that she spread a story around the neighborhood that I baited her daughter with Mochi, only to then withhold him out of spite. Now, thankfully, nobody really believed her, but she still gives me the dirtiest looks anytime I pass her up. Now, when it comes to Mochi himself, he is completely oblivious and totally unbothered, living his best life as usual, which is exactly how I want him to be. Wow, this lady's crazy. She not only tried to take your cat, but she showed up to your house to do it. First of all, how does she know where you live? That is some creepy behavior right there. That is like really not okay. But it's also insane that she literally had this conversation on messaging the day before, calling you selfish and all this other stuff, and then shows up at your house like, "Okay, we're ready for Mochi." It's like, lady, what are you talking about? You can't do that to someone. You can't just walk up and be like, "We're taking your cat for the day and there's nothing you can do about it." So yeah, this lady's out of her mind if she thought this was okay. Because at the end of the day, the only person who ruined this kid's birthday party is the mom in this story, because the original poster quite literally didn't do anything wrong. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for laughing at my sister's relationship troubles after she cheated on her boyfriend? Because right now she is not talking to me, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I have a younger sister who we will call Emily, who was with her high school sweetheart by the name of Jake ever since she was 14 years old. For reference, Emily is now 25 years old. They dated all through high school and college, and honestly, they were the epitome of a perfect couple. Jake was always so thoughtful. He would surprise her with gifts, plan elaborate dates, and he literally lit up whenever she was around. They even talked about getting married at one point. Well, fast forward to a few months ago, and Emily cheated on Jake and broke up with him to be with her affair partner, who we will call Mark. Since then, she's been complaining to me about how Mark doesn't do any of the romantic things that Jake used to do. Apparently, he doesn't surprise her with gifts, and their dates are pretty lackluster compared to what she had with Jake. Last week, while I was on the phone phone with her, she started venting about how she feels unsatisfied in her new relationship. I don't know what came over me, but I just burst out laughing. I mean, she cheated on the guy who literally worshipped the ground she walked on, and now she's complaining about the new guy not measuring up? It just sounded so absurd to me. Emily then got really upset and told me that I was being insensitive. I tried to explain that I wasn't laughing at her pain, but it felt like poetic justice given how she treated Jake. Now she's barely talking to me, and I'm starting to feel bad for laughing at her. So am I the jerk for laughing at my sister, especially after she cheated on someone who treated her like a queen? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk. Emily cheated on Jake and didn't appreciate him at all. She had a fantastic relationship and is only now seeing that she completely screwed it all up. And you know what? If I was her older brother, I would say the exact same thing. I would be like, yeah, this is definitely poetic justice because you completely ruined everything. So no, you're not the jerk here, because what Emily did to Jake, in my opinion, is unacceptable. Me and my friends worked the system at my Catholic high school by quite literally absolving ourselves of any kind of consequences to our bad actions. And I'm honestly still amazed that we got away with it, all because of some loopholes that I thankfully discovered. Here's what happened. So I was raised in a devout Roman Catholic family who sent me and my siblings to Catholic-run schools from kindergarten all the way through high school. Now, for this to make sense, some basic understanding of Catholic religious doctrine is going to be needed. And just bear with me, as I will keep it brief. Catholics practice something called the Sacrament of Holy Confession. The belief is that if you confess your sins to a priest and truly repent for what you've done, the priest has the power to forgive your sins in the eyes of God. Most churches will have things called confessionals for this purpose, while some newer ones have small rooms with chairs, and the classic confessional is like a small closet, with the priest sitting in the closet next to you, separated by a privacy screen. Usually, confession will be held after a morning daily mass service, and one or more priests will set up the confessional, and congregants will go in one by one and say their confession. Now, the bond of the confessional is absolutely sacrosanct within the church. Think of it like lawyer-client privilege. A priest is never ever supposed to share anything they learn in the confessional, nor act on any information that they learn. Priests have even been executed by their government for refusing to testify in a trial about something they hear in a confessional. If a priest is found to have broken this bond, he will be kicked out of the priesthood and could possibly even be excommunicated from the church. So basically, it is a very big deal. So much so that the policy for priests is that even if they later learn something through normal means that they originally first learned in the confessional, they are not allowed to act on that information, lest it even give the impression to the person who confessed it that the priest was somehow breaking the bond of confessional. And this last part is very crucial to the story. Well, sophomore year, my Catholic high school had its administration taken over by Salesian, a religious order of brothers and monks who are dedicated to educating children. Our new principal was a Salesian priest and started holding daily mass in our campus chapel every morning before classes. And he really encouraged people to go, but despite his efforts, it really never took off. It would just be the usual 1 to 2 super devout teachers and maybe one other super religious student or so. Then one Monday morning, right after homeroom, we hear the not uncommon announcement over the PA stating that the following students report to the principal's office immediately. Most of the time, this happened when those students were getting disciplined for some weekend shenanigans of some kind, and that is important to know because at a private school like this, we could be punished for that sort of thing. Well, we come to find out that someone threw a raging party. Someone's parents found out, they called the school, and now everyone involved was getting punished. And it was at this moment that I had an incredible epiphany. Next Monday morning, I was at morning mass bright and early, right at the front of the line to go into the confessional afterwards. I sat down with Father Jim, and I confessed to him in great detail all the trouble me and my friends had gotten up to over the weekend. And I told him everything, especially with where we went and who did what. The first time, I think he was kind of surprised. He gave me some acts of contrition to perform, and then said the absolution and sent me on my way. And I think the first few times he was actually pleased with himself that he's starting to really teach these kids. But I'm pretty sure that midway through the semester, he had caught on to what I was doing, and every now and then, he would make a sly reference or crack a smile. But he literally couldn't stop me. You see, by going and confessing everything we did over the weekend to our principal first thing Monday morning, I was putting all that information into the bonds of the confessional. Anything I told him there, Father would never be able to act on without risking serious consequences. If he got to his office and his first message was from my friend's mom explaining how she had caught all of us drinking and smoking in the alley behind her house, he could thank her for the information, but he couldn't punish us for it because I had already told him 20 minutes earlier all about it in the confessional. This tradition lasted all the way through senior year into graduation, and it served me and my friends in incredibly well. Some other people must have figured things out as time went on, because by the time I graduated, Monday mass sessions were always well attended, and Father had to start doing them earlier to save time for all the confessions he was hearing before classes. Now, I don't know if it was me or the father that was guilty of malicious compliance here, but it makes me wonder if we played him by going to confessional like he insisted, but only for our own selfish reasons. Or did he play us in some kind of like 4D chess move? I mean, after all, in just 2 years, he somehow managed to get dozens and dozens of high school students to regularly attend mass before class, as well as going to confession every single week. So maybe this was a win-win across the board, because as a result, me and my friends were able to get out of so many problems. That is a really funny way of working the system, because you quite literally put this guy between a rock and a hard place, especially when you consider the impact that all of this would have on that principal's career. Am I the jerk for telling my father-in-law that he is an awful father for the way that he treated my husband? Because after I said that, he got super defensive, and at this point, I'm not sure what to do, or if I made a mistake by talking to him in the first place. Here's what happened. So I knew my husband, who we will call Rowan, for a while before we even started dating. We grew up in the same town, and we were good friends through school, so I met a lot of his family when I was a kid. We lost contact for university, but then kind of talked again afterwards, and have evidently dated and gotten married. When I was a kid, I always kind of thought that Rowan's dad was weird. I obviously didn't have much context for it then, but this is something I always thought. His mom passed away when Rowan was young, and he has one older brother who's about 11 years older than him, but obviously the age gap meant that they weren't very close for much of his childhood. I know that when Rowan was a teenager, he acted out, he drank a lot with his friends, got into fights, and didn't have good grades. I don't doubt that he was a difficult kid to raise, but I always thought that he was a good person, and I still do. When we started dating, he told me about the reasons behind him acting out, that his father was always drinking or out of the house, and that he constantly told Rowan that he wasn't good enough, that he was an awful son and all this other garbage, and was also accusing him of sneaking out, doing illegal substances, and he was constantly tearing his room apart looking for anything incriminating. Rowan's changed a lot now, and is a genuinely down-to-earth guy that would help anyone that asked. Him and his father don't really speak anymore, and this was mainly due to a huge argument they had when Rowan was about 18 years old, and his dad said that his mom would be really disappointed in him if she was still alive today, and that he was never going to amount to anything. Rowan told me after that, he packed his bags, stayed with a friend for a while, and hasn't particularly spoken to his dad ever again. Well, Rowan and I went back to the hometown this weekend to see my parents, and me and my mom went out to a bar for ketchup. I immediately recognized his dad because he has a bunch of tattoos of random things on his neck, and that's something that I remember looking at as a kid, and he was standing next to me at the bar. We then made eye contact, and he looked surprised and said something to the effect of, "I heard you and Rowan got married. I'm surprised. He always has been a skirt chaser. Thank God he doesn't speak to me anymore." I then repeated the sentiment that I was glad they didn't speak anymore, but added that it was because he'd been an awful father. Well, when I said that, he got really defensive, saying that Rowan had been difficult to raise, and when he said that, I just turned around and left to go and sit back down with my mom. At this point, I do kind of pity him, but I also wish that I had just not spoken to him and just left the situation. So am I the jerk for the way I handle this, and for calling this guy an awful father? What should I do? No, this guy really does sound like a piece of garbage. Like, how is that an introduction to like literally talking to someone who is married to your son? Like, if he's gonna give out that kind of garbage, then he had better be ready to receive it in return, because this guy's attitude, in my opinion, was completely inappropriate, and the fact that he got defensive after the terrible things that he said, in my opinion, shows exactly how awful this guy is. Today, I need to confess that the worst mistake I ever made was telling people that I won the lottery, because now everybody knows that I'm incredibly rich, but as a result, I had to cut literally everybody out of my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I won the lottery about 7 years ago. Between my annuity and profits made from investments, I get shy of $800,000 a year. I was absolutely stunned that I had won, but once I confirmed that I won, I started telling people. I thought that they would be happy for me, and they were happy for like a minute, but then they started asking me for money. It started with my friends and family, and then they told other people, and eventually I was literally getting 10 calls a day from people asking me for money. My favorite was the sister of my coworker saying she needed money for rent, and a friend asking me to buy them a $20,000 ring for a girl he had been dating only a few months, and she was even messing around with other guys on the side. Some people successfully used me, and I just eventually cut them off, and I still helped some people, but I had to cut them off too, because they were asking me for money only to give it to others or using the money for something different. It was all very traumatic. I even had a therapist try to rip me off by asking me for a cash tip after our sessions. Eventually, I was spending more money on people than I was on myself. It's ironic that I have more money than I need, yet I can't give it away because it brings nothing but problems. People make generosity not worth it. People want me to finance their best lives and have the arrangement be exclusively on their terms. And I will never understand why people can't accept one thing without trying to get more. So I just chalk it up that people in my life had no respect for me, because this is something that honestly I'm so sick of dealing with. Okay, I think I've read so many stories like this, and the biggest common theme is that if you win the lottery, literally don't tell anybody. Keep it a secret and keep a lid on it. Because for starters, let's be honest, none of us are gonna win anything like that. The odds are so low it's not even funny. But if it does happen, like, my God, do yourself a favor and just don't say anything to anybody, because then you're gonna end up like the original poster. They're getting 10 calls a day from people being like, hey, can I have some money? And then pretty quick, all your family and friends are gonna become like these leeches in your life. Like, I can see that becoming really traumatic and just so awful, because I know when I have good news, I talk to my family and I tell them everything. So you would think that this would be something that would be like safe to talk about, but no, it's just gonna be used against you probably forever. So hopefully all of this settles in some kind of way, and hopefully you're able to like enjoy this money and use it for a good reason, and not just to like fund other people's lives or activities. Because after a while, I can imagine that being a nightmare to deal with, especially if you have to cut people out of your life because they turned into a toxic mess. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that I won't be giving my son her last name? Because as a result, she's changed the rules of the trust that we have in our family that would basically deny my kid any chance at any money that we have as a family, all because his last name would be different. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 21-year-old female who's expecting my first child with my partner of almost 8 years. Our son is due in less than 2 months. And for this story to make sense, it requires some backstory. My father isn't in the picture, so my immediate family is me, my mom, and my twin. About 3 years ago, my maternal grandmother passed away. I didn't have a relationship with her, and neither did my mom due to them always fighting. My grandma was quite wealthy, and when she passed away, she left me and my twin $500,000 total in a trust that we couldn't access until we were 25 years old. But on the other hand, she left my mother absolutely nothing. So my mother got a lawyer and got money released early from that trust with the condition that me and my twin gave her half of our inheritance each. Now, if we hadn't agreed to give her anything, she would have gotten absolutely nothing. Our mom then convinced us to put all the money into a trust of her own that would be for our family exclusively for education and housing, saying it would build stability for future generations. So I used this money to get a house that me and my partner currently live in. Since my mom found out I was pregnant, she's been very pushy that we use her last name, which is currently my last name. It's a traditional Scottish name with a capital letter in the middle and a lot of use of the letters M and N. I didn't like the last name as it's hard to pronounce just from reading it. I also fully intended to take my partner's last name in the future. 3 months ago, I told her that we wouldn't be using her last name and we would be using just my partner's last name instead. Well, when I said this set her off, calling me petty and ungrateful. Now, I apologized for upsetting her, and I asked if we could have a conversation about it so I could understand why it upset her. I expressed that I love her, and I don't want her to be upset with me, but she refused, saying it was my child and I could do what I wanted. Well, after that, I assumed that she had come to terms with it and just moved on. But fast forward to last week, and I get a text message from my mom saying the following: "By the way, I've made changes to the trust. My last name needs to be your child's surname if you want him to benefit from the trust. I have not worked this hard for the future just to support your partner's last name. That is just the way it is. Either use my last name or your kid gets nothing. I'd rather take the lot and just spend it." But when I saw this message, this really upset me. I asked her to give me some time and space to think about what she's done, but she then went off on me about how her hard work wouldn't be wasted, even though she herself said it would be set up for future generations just like my kid. She wouldn't even have any money to blackmail me in the first place if we didn't agree to give her half of my inheritance after her own mother screwed her over. So at this point, I've got no contact, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm the jerk for not just using her last name to keep her happy in order to make sure that my son gets access to that money. I don't want him to miss out just because his grandmother is an entitled piece of work. What should I do? Oh man, this one is awful. First of all, you did not do anything wrong, and no, you're not the jerk for picking your partner's last name. Your mom is insane, and the way she's treating you, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. This is some grade grade A manipulation that you absolutely do not deserve. Like, there were a lot of mistakes that kind of led us to this point where you gave her half your inheritance and then put all of it in a trust that she can access, because that was just like not a good move. Clearly your grandmother knew something that you didn't, because your mom got nothing from her mom, and I think we're starting to see why, because she is clearly a vindictive psychopath. Like, who in their right mind would act like this? Like, this is so unfair. So hopefully you can find some kind of resolution to this, especially when it comes to having this trust that was supposed to be for the family itself, because it literally just doesn't seem right that your mom can literally change the rules of this trust just to deny your kid specifically, all because you're not using the same last name, because that in and of itself is absolutely not fair. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.